Kentucky's voter registration numbers surging before the deadline earlier this month. That's according to the Secretary of State's office. And while Republicans and Democrats make up most of Kentucky's voters, the fastest growing group right now is independents. So what does that mean? LEX 18's political reporter Carolina Buchek goes in depth.
The number of Kentuckians registering to vote keeps growing. The Secretary of State says voter registration is surging in Kentucky from September 1st to October 11th, which was the registration deadline for the upcoming election. Kentucky saw more than 22,000 new voters register. That's double of what we saw in August. In total, registered Republicans now account for 45.4% of Kentucky's voters. Registered Democrats account for 44.8%. And independents and others account for 9.8%. So Republicans and Democrats still make up most of Kentucky's voters. But Secretary of State Michael Adams says the group growing the most is independents.
There's been a surge in independent voters who are not Democrats or Republicans by registration. Of those, 45% are young voters.
Take a look at the September through October 11th stats. Republican registration increased by 0.67%. Democratic registration increased by 0.09%. Independent/other registration increased by 1.1%. So independents are on the rise, but Secretary Adams says we still don't know if or how they'll impact the upcoming election.
The big question, of course, is do they show up and vote or not?
But there is a good amount we know about independent voters, thanks to political science.
We want to see ourselves as independent. Usually we aren't.
Dr. Stephen Voss from the University of Kentucky says most voters have a political party they end up aligning with.
Most people who claim to be politically independent aren't. And when we watch their voting patterns, they're either fairly consistently Democrats or fairly consistently Republicans.
So he says in most states, the rise of the independent likely isn't going to really do much. But in Kentucky, he says, it's a little more meaningful than it has been in other states. Why? Well, because we have a closed primary system, meaning those who register as independents, they can't vote in partisan primaries.
I mean, if you register as an independent, you're taking a hit. You're giving away power to help decide who the likely winners in a contest will be. It's a more meaningful independence, a more pugnacious statement. I'm not registering for either of those folks.
Voss also points out that many voters in Kentucky aren't being served by Republicans or Democrats. Why? They find the Republican Party too conservative and the Democratic Party too liberal.
People who want to be sort of moderate or conservative Democrats, people who are fairly populist Republicans, they're getting upset with the two-party system we have, and more of them are registering as independents.
So now the question that remains, how will these independents vote in November? In Lexington, Carolina Buchek, LEX 18 News.
A reminder, Election Day is November 8th. Stick with LEX 18 for all of your Decision 2022 coverage, including the latest results on election night.